Hey everyone, welcome to AppSheet 101, where we're going to take a closer look at how you can build a really easy expense tracking app using Google Workspace's AppSheet. So we'll take a closer look at how to capture receipts, where they're stored, and even some quick and easy automations to make them easy to find afterwards. So without further ado, I'll step aside and let's get started. So there are really two ways to create an app in AppSheet. The first is going to be directly at appsheet.com, where you will head over to this Create button, down to App, and then you can either start creating with Gemini, existing data, a template, which is really nice to be able to have a jumping point, or a blank app. I personally prefer to start with a spreadsheet, so that's where we'll go for today's video. So we'll head over to sheets.google.com and open up a blank spreadsheet. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and label or name our app. And I'm going to call our app Meconomics. Feel free to name it whatever you would like. We can change this later, so it's not set in stone. After that, we are going to want to enter the points of data that we would like to collect from people. So these are the ones that we use for our company. I'll go ahead and expand it for everyone. Feel free to customize this and use the ones that make sense for you. There are going to be a few in here that are a little unfamiliar and might not make sense right now, but they will make sense later in the video. So I would just encourage you to keep all these as they are right now, and then you can adjust yours later on the back end. And then finally, the last thing we want to do is label our sheet, and we'll call this expenses. Now, at my company, we also like to reimburse for mileage, so I would like to be able to capture that data as well. We will add another sheet at the bottom here, and I'm going to call this mileage. And then we'll add our column headers again and put these at the top. Now, once again, feel free to customize this as you'd like. This is what makes sense for my company, but it might not make sense for yours. So now the next step is to really create our app. And this is pretty easy. You head up to Extensions, go down to AppSheet, and then click Create App. And AppSheet's going to take all that data that we just put into our spreadsheet, and they're going to reorganize it for us and create a very basic functioning app for us to work with. And you can see it's already done that. You can even play with this right now. If you were to hit this Add button, you can see it's got all of those columns that we just entered, and we can get started. Now, obviously, it needs a lot of customizing, so those are going to be our next steps. So we'll go ahead and exit out of this, and then head over to the Data tab. Okay, now before I get too far along here, I would just like to explain the user interface of AppSheet at a really high level and what these column headers here actually are going to mean to you. So we'll do a quick rundown of AppSheet as it sits right now. Over here on the right panel, you can see you get a nice indication of what your app looks like so far. You can interact with it and edit it. We'll leave this alone for now and interact with it later. You can also change the view so you can see what your app's going to look like on mobile, tablet, or desktop. If you'd ever like to go back to your sheet because maybe you've lost it, if you click View Data Source, it'll go ahead and open that spreadsheet for you again. And those are really going to be the key components that you're going to interact with so far with AppSheet. Now, the first thing that I notice is that it has pulled in our expenses sheet, but not the mileage sheet. And I want to make sure that both are represented in my app. So we'll head over here and click this plus button. And AppSheet is very smart, and it was able to tell that there is a mileage sheet in our larger sheet for Meconomics. So we will go ahead and add that in there. I always like to leave these options, update, add, and delete, available for all of our users. They can kind of use the app freely, but feel free to customize that as it makes sense for your business. Go ahead and add that to our sheet. And as you can see, AppSheet's been able to pull in the mileage tab with all of our columns included. Okay, let's head back to the expenses tab. Now let's run through these top column headers and just talk about what they mean at a very high level so you have a basic understanding. So the key column is really important. It's going to tell AppSheet that this field is being used as a unique identifier for your other records. So this will correlate to your ID column, which is also going to be a very important column, and we'll explain that in a little bit, but these two are going to be our keys for the whole app. Next, label. It basically tells AppSheet to use a specific column's value as labels or identifiers. So for instance, if we were to take a look at categories over here, underneath categories, there's going to be a bunch of different labels or values that AppSheet is going to have underneath it. So we will eventually click this label button over here, but for now we'll just move along. If you have custom formulas, AppSheet will pull up a ton of different formula options for you. Feel free to get creative. Next, we have show. This is whether you would like this column or this area to show up in your app itself. Editable, pretty self-explanatory. Required, same thing, self-explanatory. Initial value. This is what's going to show up in that box on your app when it first populates. So right here, we've got a unique ID, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. Display name. This is what's going to be shown in your app. Description is what your users will see right above the input box when they're filling out a form. So if you leave it blank, the app will just use whatever's in the display name field. And if that's empty too, it'll fall back to the column's name itself. So it's really helpful when you want to give users some extra guidance while they're entering information. Search is also pretty useful. Checking this will let your users filter their data and find specific records if they need. It really makes the app more user-friendly when people need to look something up. Let's say in this instance, they have hundreds of receipts. It's always nice to have that box checked. Scan. This is a pretty nifty feature as well. It's just going to let the app use your cameras, or your phone's camera, to capture data for things like barcodes or QR codes, things of that nature. Now, NFC, that's for near-field communication. If you enable this, your app can interact with NFC tags when your users get their device close to them. We won't really be using it for this app, but it is a nice, nifty feature to have. And then that P2 column just lets AppSheet know that there is personally identifiable information in that row, so it should plan accordingly. Okay. Well, now let's go ahead and customize each of our rows so that way it makes the most sense for our app. So I'll go ahead and collapse this right panel here and give us a little more room to work with. First, we'll start with this ID row. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the key and ID column are very important. These two are going to make sure that you don't have any conflicting data in your app. So we're going to have this run in the background of the app, and that way users won't interact with it, but it'll keep everything nice and organized on the back end, and you won't have any problems with duplicate entries or anything like that. So we will keep the ID column as our key. I don't need to show it. It's okay to be editable and required. This initial value is just going to populate those unique identifiers automatically, so we don't have to deal with it at all, and our users don't as well, which is ideal. We'll go ahead and unclick search since it's running in the background. Okay, date. Everything should pretty much stay standard with date. I am going to require it because I need to know the days that our receipts came in or were charged. And searching for a date is helpful as well. Okay, email address, it's got the correct type. Now I want the email address to automatically populate. So I'm going to type in a formula called user email. And what that'll do is automatically bring that up for each individual user. So that way there's no conflicting information and it's always consistent. I do want to require this, and we will keep that searchable as well. Now the categories row is going to be a little unique. We are going to have a drop down of categories for people to pick from, so that way they don't create their own adventure game and mess up all of our taxes. So what we'll do is we'll click on this drop down, and we're going to head up to enum here. And then we'll click the little pencil over here and click add. And this is where you will add every category that you'd like to collect from your users. So you might have things like insurance, you might have travel, you might have meals and entertainment. And make sure these work for your business. We all categorize things differently. So I won't bore you with our long list of categories, but it should be comprehensive for your business. When you're done, you can go ahead up here and click Done. I would like to use this as a label because, as I mentioned before, there are things nested underneath this categories label over here. And I'd need this required, and I will come over here. We'll go ahead and keep that as searchable as well. Vendor name. Vendor name should be standard. I do want to make sure it's required because I need to know which vendor this receipt falls under. And we'll go ahead and make that searchable as well. Amount spent. I would prefer amount spent be a price instead of a number. I just like the way it populates more in the app itself. It does need to be required as well. I won't have it be searchable. Upload file. This is going to allow you to upload PDFs, PNGs, JPEGs, things like that. It is okay as a file. I'm not going to make it required because not everyone's going to have a file to upload. So I don't want them to get hung up on silly things like that. And I don't need it to collect any of this data as well. Upload file URL. I'll explain a little bit about what this looks like in a minute, but we do need this to be a URL and not a file. So we'll go ahead and change that. And all this is okay here. Now for camera, we want to have our users be able to take pictures of receipts with their phones. So I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to have it collect images. And everything else should stay the same. I'll unclick that because we don't need to search for it. It correctly categorized this as a URL, not required. We don't need to search for it. And then on these last two, these should be good. We don't need to require them, and we don't need these to be searchable. Okay, and then let's head over to mileage. First off the bat, I would like to move this label as off. You do have to have one clicked, so we'll go ahead and just put it under date. Everything's fine here. I don't want to show this as well. And then we can unclick search. Then under email, we need to do equals user email again. Go ahead and click save. And then under miles driven, I would like this to be a number and not text. And everything else should be good to go. Now, the one thing I would like to encourage with AppSheet is saving as you go. And I'm going to show you in a second here why it's important because it checks your work. Make sure everything is jiving well as you go along. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And as you can see, AppSheet has found a warning that it wants to show me about. There's something in my app that just isn't jiving. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And you can see at the expenses table, it has multiple non-image columns marked as a label, but only one non-image label is allowed. So they removed those extra labels. It's not a big deal. There's nothing that we need to physically take care of right now because AppSheet already took care of it for us. So we'll go ahead and click exit, knowing that they've taken care of us, and we'll move on to the next steps. Now that we have the basics of our app ready, we need to add some dummy data so we can validate that we have everything set up correctly. And then the next step will be to really customize it and make it look professional. So the first thing I would like to do is go ahead and pop out this side panel, and we will just enter in some information and see how it populates in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to just type in some random stuff, and you feel free to do it on your end as well, just to make sure that everything's working well. Okay, add some random images. And then when you're done, click save. Head over to mileage and do the same thing. And click save. Perfect. And as you can see, they've both populated in here. We need to do some fine tuning to make it easier to read. And then if we head over to our Meconomics Google Sheet, you can see it's all populated that information here. We will get to these in just a second. Let's head back to Meconomics. Now, the first thing I noticed was that when we were adding a new entry into our sheet, I noticed that this upload file URL and this camera URL were also populating. And that's awesome that it showed up, but we really want that running in the background of our app. So no big deal. You head over to Expenses, come over to those two rows and just unclick Show. You can see them disappearing as we're doing it. And then we'll go ahead and save our app. Perfect. Okay, now the next step is to really customize all of this to make sure that it's appearing in a way that's the easiest for all of us to read. So I'm going to head down here and I'll click this pencil next to Expenses and we'll start there. Now you can go ahead and change the view name. I like Expenses, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can change how your viewers see this in the app, whether it's deck form, maybe you prefer a table, a gallery. Feel free to play with those and make them what you like. I prefer the deck because it stacks them nice and neat. Next, we'll hop on down to Position. And this is basically just going to show where the button is located or accessed in your app. Right now we have it in the middle. If you were to click Menu, it'll bring that mileage up to this drop down in here. And if you click Reference, it'll use that as a reference column. So it's fine as middle or first. Either one works here. We'll hop down to View Options. Now, I like to sort by date, but once again, this is what's going to make the most sense for your company. So do this however you'd like. I prefer to sort by date, and then I group by email address, and that keeps all of my users together. And I'll come down here. I love the main image as an auto-assigned with the camera. You can see I've got my image here. It's very tiny, but I've got my image here. Primary header for this one, I prefer the primary header to be date again. I prefer the secondary header to be vendor. And then I like the summary column in the upper right to have my amount spent. And that just gives me a nice snapshot of what I'm doing, my users here, and then all of my transactions will be below here, which I think is nice. Now, the other thing I would like to change is I like this icon to be a little more unique and pop out as we're using the app. So we'll click Display, and you can pick any sort of icon that makes sense to you. If we scroll down here or even type in $, you can see there's a bunch of icons we can use that would represent money. I'll just go ahead and do this one. Lovely. And then everything else should remain the same. Now we'll go ahead and do the same things with mileage. Scroll back up to the top. I like this to be a deck as well. I'm going to have it on the right side of my expenses. I like things sorted by date in ascending. I prefer they are grouped by users again. And then, as you can see here, it's got the mileage below. I kind of prefer this to be a description of what we did. And then in the secondary column, I like this to be my miles driven, and that just pops everything up nicely and makes it good and neat. We'll scroll down a little further to display and go ahead and pick our icon that we'd like. We'll just go ahead and use a cute little car and call it good. Okay. Now everything is nice and neat here. We'll go ahead and click Save at the top. Now that you can see our app really starting to take shape, it's starting to get organized. In a little bit here, we'll deal with more of the pretties and add logos and colors, but I just want to take a second here and talk about where these images and files that we are collecting are being stored, because that's an important piece of the puzzle. So after you've input all the information into your app and it goes over to our Google Sheet, you'll see everything that we've entered is captured here. You'll notice that the PNG file that I uploaded, it's not a clickable link. So to find this, AppSheet is showing us that it's being stored in expenses_images. So what we'll do is head to drive.google.com, head over to My Drive, and then expenses_images. And you can see our .png file was captured right here. So let's head back to our Google Sheet. I personally don't like clicking more than I have to, and I would love to see a URL automatically populate here that we can click and it'll bring up our receipt really easily. So to do that, we're going to need to create an automation in our app. So let's head back over to the Meconomics app, and we'll come over here to this cute little robot in the corner and click Automation, create my first automation, create a new bot, configure event, create a new event. Then we'll come over here to the side panel and we'll name it, and we'll just call this URL update. And then you can customize this area as you'd like. I personally like to unclick the deletes just because I like to keep as much information as I can. We'll head back over here, click Add a Step, create a new step, then go ahead and click on that step you just created. With this dropdown, instead of run a task, you'll run a data action. And we're going to come over here and update this column to file URL. And next, we're going to add a concatenate expression in this formula field right here. So we'll go ahead and click in there. And this is the formula that we're going to add to our sheet. I'll go ahead and drop this in the description below for you to grab as well. So this portion will not change for your app. This is the name of your app. It can be found up here in the URL. If you see app name equals Meconomics 632 yada yada yada, this is exactly what I grabbed to pop into here. Our table name is expenses, not the mileage, but expenses. And then the file name, this is just going to pull from that upload file column. So we'll enter that there. And go ahead and click save. Below, we'll go camera URL. And we're going to do the same thing with another concatenate formula, except this is just going to say camera instead of upload file. So same thing, you'll use the same URL up here. This is your app name. This is the sheet it's pulling from. It's still in the expenses sheet. And then camera. Go ahead and click save. Okay, now let's test this out. So let's head back over to the data tab. Here's our app. We'll go ahead and add a new receipt. Let's change the date just for fun. Category. Upload a couple of files. And a description. And click save. As you can see up here, it's showing that it is syncing with our Google Sheet. So let's head back over to our Google Sheet. And what we just entered has now populated a URL for us to click on. And when we do that, it'll automatically populate that receipt that we just uploaded. So a nice, easy addition to your app. Now that we've got the app functioning the way we really want it to, let's make it look and feel the way it should. So let's head back over to our Meconomics app. We'll go down here and click this little gear icon in the corner, and then click theme and brand. And this is where you can really make it look like your own. You can toggle between light and dark themes. You can customize the colors. I like to put our company colors in here so it really looks like ours. With the app logo, you can customize this as well. So you can pull in a file from Google Drive and really make it what you need it to be. I'll have the launch image be the same thing, just a picture of our logo, keep it really simple. But like I said, feel free to make something fancy on Canva and however you'd like. I don't believe we need a background image, but you can change the background on this as well. See, it populates over here. I personally like it nice and clean. Perfect. Now, I also like to see the logo in the header, so I'm going to go ahead and toggle that on. I think that looks nice. We'll go ahead and save it again. Perfect. Okay. Now we're in the final stretch, folks. This is really going to be the final touches on your app, and then it'll be good to go. So one of the things we should check before we deploy is the deployment checker up here. So as you can see here, AppSheet's given us a few warnings of things it would like us to take care of before we actually deploy our app. So one is in the app description. We need a short app description, an industry, and a function for the app. And then down here, it's talking about content caching on the mobile device and data caching on the server. And if you ever need to read more about these, you can click that More Info button there. But let's go ahead and get these remedied before we deploy. So first thing we'll do is head over to the Settings button. And then under Information, we'll go ahead and fill out all of this so that way it makes AppSheet happy. So I have this all ready for me to just copy paste in here. I will go ahead and put it in the description below here. So a short description there. I'm going to keep these the same. Under function, feel free to put whatever sort of function you'd like on this. I like to put accounting. Industry, go ahead and put your industry in here. We'll just pick travel for fun. And then under user guidance, I like to just do a quick start guide. Once again, I'll have this in the description below. About URL, we can leave blank. I will put our privacy policy in here and information I have on terms of use. And then that should be good. Feel free to add any documentation you have on the app here. I do recommend putting my YouTube video here as a reference URL just so you know where you came from, because there's no more frustrating thing in the world than losing your steps. Okay, and then the next thing it wanted to update were some performance things. So let's head over to the performance button over here. And one of the things it recommended was server caching. And that's just going to allow data to be stored on the AppSheet server instead of the cloud provider. So we'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll head over to offline mode and toggle store content for offline use. And that's just nice if people don't have a great internet connection and need to access the information. It'll automatically be cached on their phone. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and hit save. And then we'll head back over to deployment, deployment check, continue editing, and then we're going to run that deployment check again. And it looks like we have passed everything with flying colors, and we are now ready to deploy our app. Now to do that, we'll head on down to this big blue button right here and click Move App to Deployed State. And this will just allow us to share this app with our users. You can do the deployment check again and see our app is now deployed. So we'll head up to the share button in the top right corner and click it. Now I would like anyone with a micocloud.com domain to be able to use this app, and I don't have to add individual users, so it'll cut down on the maintenance a bit. So I'm going to add our domain as a blanket share. And then when I want to share it with the actual users, we'll click down to this link, that copy shared link. And then you can see you get an editor link, which will obviously give the user access to edit the app. Be careful about who you share that one with. The browser link will take everyone to the browser version of our app. So if they'd like to enter their expenses there, they can. I would be sure to bookmark this for easy access. And then finally, you've got the install link for mobile users to install the app on their device. And that one's pretty standard as well. Now, I personally love to have an icon on my phone that I can use to just easily click on and bring up the app real quickly. So the way you do that is you'll head to the Apple or Google Play Store and get the AppSheet app. And once that's on the phone, you'll sign into it, enter your credentials, and then once you click on it, you'll see our app right in there. So to get the icon, you'll click on that hamburger in the top left corner, add a shortcut, and then in the top right, you'll see that box with the arrow coming out. Click that. Scroll down a bit on your phone, add it to your home screen, and you'll see a preview of what it's going to look like. Click Add. And then there you go. There's your Meconomics app for you to use right on your phone. Pretty simple and easy to use. The last thing I would like to show you on the mobile app functionality, because I think it's kind of fun, if you click that plus sign in the lower right and we enter in just some more dummy information. Feel free to use whatever you'd like here. Now, when we click the camera button on our phone, we can actually take a photo of our receipts. So if you're at lunch, this can be a really nice way to just get your receipt into the application and not have to worry about it. And there we go. So we'll go ahead and click Save. And then let's go check our Google Sheet to see if everything has populated. And there we go. That was the file we just uploaded. Here's the camera image, and that is the receipt that I just put into our phone. Now, the final thing I would like to discuss with AppSheet is going to be more on the maintenance side. So at the end of the month, you'll have collected all of your expenses here, and then you need to find a good place to store them, because the last thing you want anyone to do is come in here and break your sheet, because I promise you somebody will. So what I recommend is at the end of every month, this is going to be your main Meconomics sheet. So you'll come over here, click File, and at the end of the month, let's make a copy of this. Call it Meconomics Expenses, and then we'll call it, I don't know, October 24. Why not? Go ahead and save that where you'd like, and then make a copy. And then that way, this is going to represent your expenses from October. You've got them all captured. And then you can come over here and go ahead and clear out everything because you don't really need it anymore. And then if you come over to your app, we'll give it a quick refresh. You'll see that all those apps have been cleared out and it's ready to take on new entries for November, but you have all of your October expenses captured in a different sheet. So just a little pro tip there, because people will mess with your original sheet and it'll drive you crazy. So keep this one to yourself and make sure you're making that new copy each month. And there you have it. A really easy to use, simple app to create, and now you're an app developer, so go ahead and put that on the resume as well. But congratulations, you've built your first AppSheet app. I'm very proud of you. If you liked my video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I'd love to make more of these if people are interested. And go ahead in the comments below. Feel free to ask questions. I'll be sure to answer them as they pop up. But anyways, I had a great time building with all of you today, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Take care. Bye.